Today, in the media conference with Lal Goel, which is brought to you by V4NEWS, Global TV, V4 Stream, Malnadu TV, News Gaon Se, Samvad Sarokar News, Organ Donation India Foundation and Gyan. Our endeavor is to enlighten you with a current topic. And today we have a very, very important topic. And the topic is One Nation, One Election. But before I will go for that topic, I would like to inform you that today country is observing the Jallianwala Bagh Massacre Day. On 13th April, we pay tribute to the martyrs who have sacrificed their lives in Jallianwala Bagh at Amritsar. Their valor will inspire Indians for the years to come. Today, India commemorates 102nd years of the incidents that took hundreds of lives in 1919. This massacre exposed the inhuman approach of the British when the British troop cold-bloodedly opened fire into an unarmed crowd without any warning by General Dyer, which had assembled at the enclosed park. Media conference with Lal Goel paid tribute to all those who lost their lives in that brutal massacre of Jallianwala Bagh. Now coming to the main topic, and the topic is One Nation, One Election. India is the largest democratic country of the world. The general elections for the Lok Sabha and state assemblies are held at the gap of 5 years. But it is observed that election is a whole year process in India. The concept of simultaneous election is not novel in India. After independence and enforcement of constitution, the first election, which was conducted in the year of 1952, was conducted simultaneously. It was in practice from 1952 to 1967, that is 1952, 1957, 1962, and 1967. This concept was ended when 4th Lok Sabha was liquidated early. General elections for the Lok Sabha and state assemblies are held at the gap of 5 years in India. But in addition to this, elections for the different state assemblies are held in some states separately, which put huge burden on the government exchequer. Now the government wants to go for just one election in the whole country in the gap of 5 years. Government spends a lot of money, time and energy on the conduct of different elections. One nation, one election is raised by our Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, and the idea is also supported by the former President, Mr. Pranab Mukherjee, and current President, Mr. Ramnath Kovind. That is the reason that Government of India is thinking about one nation, one election system in India. And to discuss this very, very important topic of one nation, one election, we have a very, very elite expert in this field panel with us who have first-hand information and who have rather involved in the election process in one way or the other. So I would like to invite my first guest. He is Mr. Sarvesh Kaushal, IAS. Mr. Kaushal is the former Chief Secretary of Government of Punjab. He is BA Humanities, MA History. In that, he was a gold medalist, then MA Economics and LLB. He is of Indian Police Service 1981 batch and Indian Administrative Service 1982 batch. During his service period, he held important posts in Government of Punjab and Central Government. He attended several prestigious trainings in different management institutions, including Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, Xavier Labour Relations Institute, Jamshedpur, Tata Energy Research Institute, New Delhi, National Institute of Bank Management, Pune, National Law School of India, University, Bangalore, Harvard University, and Harvard Kennedy School, Harvard, USA, among so many other institutions. He is the president of Kaushal Foundation, a charitable, secular, and non-political society. He is the chairman of Law and Order Advisory Council of the Punjab Governor as administrator of UT of Chandigarh. Welcome, Mr. Kaushal, on our show. Mr. Kaushal, as you are aware that now elections are an ongoing process which is going on everywhere around the year in some states or the other states. And due to that, so many hardships are coming. And that's why the government, and especially our Honorable Prime Minister, has mooted the idea about the one nation, one election. Although there are plus and minus points, there are people who are in favor of that and there are people who are against that. We would like to know your views, Mr. About one nation, one election. Mr. Sarvesh Kaushal, please. Please unmute Mr. Kaushal.
Thank you, Mr. Goel. I am 100% in favor of this idea of one nation, one elections. India is a developing country and can ill afford to spend almost 60,000 crores for conducting one elections. A former Chief Election Commissioner, Mr. Qureshi, wrote an article that the Election Commission estimated that the cost of conducting a parliament election is about 10,000 crores, 10,000 crores. And the cost incurred by the political parties and the contestants is about 50,000 crores. The same is replicated in one-by-one elections which are held in states, state assemblies, and then down below in the lower tiers of our democracy. We waste a lot of money, we waste a lot of manpower, we suffer a policy paralysis during the model code of conduct, even though it said that only new policy cannot be introduced and there can't be any announcements to lure the voters, but actually rightly also the stranglehold of the ECI model code is so much on governance that it paralyzes it. And one election after the other, we can ill afford the governance and policy measures to come to a standstill. And then there's always a souring of a political discourse during the elections. Divides come to the fore. Abusive and highly critical narrative emerges. Casteism and communalism also gets accentuated at places. So I would say that the run-up to the elections is not a healthy environment for a cohesive and integrated India that we visualize. Then also, when there are elections and model code of conduct in vogue, there are generalized sweeping allegations against the CAPF, against the police, and even against the civil servants. And in 90% of the cases, the election commission, which is overburdened, and election commission, which is always in a hurry and dealing with more important matters, treats them in a sweeping manner. And simultaneous elections will save the entire state governance machinery from a repeated sweeping allegations, mostly by the losing political parties. Or these days, there are professional offices maintained by political parties to keep on shooting complaints and grievances. So this highly vicious narrative, cost in terms of money, cost in terms of manpower, cost in terms of other resources, logistics, this must be saved. Now, there are some negative issues in the sense that these are reservations. As you rightly said, till 1967, there were simultaneous elections, and then because of certain reasons, dissolutions, midterm dissolutions, this practice did not continue. But in 1983, in its annual report of the Election Commission of India, suggested to revert back to this. In 1999, the Law Commission of India suggested that we should go back. The BJP manifesto of 2014 and 2019 had this. The then Home Minister Sri L.K. Advani was very vocal in support of this. And as you said, the Prime Minister, Honorable Sri Narendra Modi, and the former President of India and the present Highness President of India, they are also in support of it. And all right-thinking people are in support of this, except certain vested interests who are the beneficiaries of this process. After all, when 60,000 crore rupees is spent in one elections and multiple of multiples of this amount in all elections, I mean staggered elections here and there are beneficiaries of this process. There are conduits. There are people who are the beneficiaries, they may not like it. Regional parties may not like it because they do not want to be a party in the process where the entire democratic flow is synergized into one stream. They want to maintain their separate identity. They want to separate the regional causes from the national causes. Although what we experience today is that most of the national elections also are a conglomeration or a collection of regional issues. So regional and state issues are not that diametrically opposed that they cannot converge. When they could converge till 1967, there's no reason why they can't converge today. One practical issue is if there's a midterm dissolution, what would we do? There are easy answers to that. The next government, next elected government the tenure of that government could be the remaining part of the unexpired term of the earlier dissolved government. There was a suggestion by the Law Commission, I don't know whether it's practical or not, that the leader of a house should be elected not by the party in majority, but the entire house. The party in majority should propose and the entire house should elect him. That will lead to greater stability. There was also a suggestion that no confidence motion should be followed by a confidence motion so that the governments are not dissolved by the drop of a hat. There should be like best of three or best of two in such decision makings. So I would feel that it's an issue which requires very healthy, sincere debate at the national level. And if we can save 1 lakh crore rupees for a developing country and devote that money into education, health, and social security sectors, and also in infrastructure, it will be a boon for our democracy. It will be a boon for our country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kaushal. And Mr. Kaushal has mentioned very clearly that he is in favor of one nation, one election. He has given the reasons, and he says that even the earlier election commissioners as well as the Law Commission has recommended that we should go for the earlier practice which was prevailing up to 1967. And he mentioned that about 1 lakh crore rupees which are being spent altogether by the election commission as well as the candidates or the political parties can be not be spent in every year. It can be saved so that only once in a 5 year we have to spend. And we know today the value of money because for the vaccine, one of the vaccine manufacturer wants 3,000 crores so that he can step up his manufacturing process so that more and more vaccine will be available. So if we can save this money, which has been spent only on the elections, I'm sure that development and those which are very much required for the country can be of this money will be very, very useful. Thank you very much, Mr. Kaushal, for giving your views. Now I would like to invite my next guest, and my next guest is Mr. Colonel S. Dini. Colonel S. Dini is a retired from the army. He's a contemporary writer now based at Kollam. He served as an Indian Army Infantry Rajput Regiment officer for more than 20 years. He has first-hand combat operational experiences after having served in multiple tenures in Kashmir Valley, Northeast India, and along the line of actual control in Ladakh. In Kashmir, he served for 8 years, both along the line of control and in Rashtriya Rifles. He served as a military observer with United Nations in Congo. He commanded an infantry battalion at Pangong, Teso for 2 years. After command of battalion, he was nominated for the prestigious Higher Defense Management course. He was posted as a faculty in Defense Services Staff College, DSSC, Wellington, Tamil Nadu. He took voluntary retirement from the army. His master's in defense and strategic studies from Madras University. He completed a graduate certificate course in strategic studies from Takshila Institution, Bengaluru. He undertook the Kauchalya Fellowship Program with Indian Foundation. Currently, he is pursuing MPhil in Defense and Strategic Studies from Madras University. He contributes articles in many publications as well as on digital media. He participated in various panel discussions on English, Hindi, and Malayalam TV channels and also on online website. Welcome, Colonel S. Dini on our show. Colonel Dini, you have heard what our earlier panelist, Mr. Sarvesh Kaushal, has mentioned. And he's of very clear view that one nation, one election should be the norm. Now, we would like to know from you, one nation, one election. Colonel S. Dini, please.
Thank you, Shri Goel, firstly for inviting me for this show. It's a real honor and pleasure to be on your show. And after having heard Shri Kaushal, and after before Shri Om Rawat speak, you gave me the opportunity. That's also grateful, because after the former CEC, once he speaks, I will not have anything much more to say on the subject, because I think is the most experienced person in our panel, I think, as far as elections go. So, but I will put my views as firstly, as a person who was closely involved in the conduct of elections, especially in areas where there were insurgency and such like things, where the army also, not in the direct role, but we've also had a role to play for the smooth conduct of the elections, and have seen closely there. And also as a very as an independent, as a common man, I will give my views. Now, Shri Kaushal had already mentioned a few things, and absolutely pertinent issues. And I am also of the opinion that this one nation, one poll is not something that an idea has come. I think the idea was already there. As you rightly mentioned, from 52 to 67, it is something that we just need to go back to what was existing, so that we put things in the correct order. Sometimes it is better to revert back to the old things rather than keep inventing new things and realizing that those are not something which is working for us. So and the reasons are plenty. Already the policy paralysis issue of the government during the elections are being highlighted. I want to bring about a different aspect as well. Now, what happens is, like in our country, I think about on an average 2 to 4 states go to elections every 6 months. Now, and since there are national parties involved, any elections anywhere in the country has a direct bearing on the central government. Now, due to which any event which otherwise would not have had an impact, let's say on an election in Bihar, would definitely, you'll suddenly find an event which has happened. For example, I'll give you the example of the Galwan incident which happened during this Ladakh issue. Now, when the Galwan issue happened, the troops were from the Bihar regiment, and suddenly because there were casualties and all those things, there was a narrative being built, that okay, the troops were put there because the elections are coming to Bihar and such like things. No, in a time when of such a critical nature, also when the army and the armed forces are being sucked into the political aspects of it purely because there is election coming up, it's actually it's a tragic situation. So what happens is that this is now, because the elections are so frequent. I just give you one example. There are so many examples in which, because there are elections, because there is something happening around India that is linked to the elections, and knowingly or unknowingly the armed forces get involved. Similarly, the election commission, for example, why I'm taking these names are, these are institutes of India based on which our nation is functioning and is progressing. The election commission, the armed forces, the judiciary, the constitution itself is, I think, is one of the strengths of. Due to frequent elections, the election commission is being judged, is being questioned. Why this date is given now, why not 3 days before, why not 4 months before? Such every action of the election commission is being questioned. I'm not doubting that nobody should question. In a democracy, we are free to question, but the intention of the CEC or the election commission itself gets I think a far amount of negativity is being thrown at them, which is also not desirable. So these things, once the elections are fixed in, let's say, in a 5-year period, once or maybe twice, as whatever is suitable for our this kind of things will lessen. So the armed forces, they can function there. You don't have to see that if you do a surgical strike, it is because there is some elections coming, and nobody will charge you that. So those kind of things are the one of the things which I find, apart from the earlier mentioned aspects of economical aspect, that is a given fact. There's so much of money which comes into the election process. Those automatically, once the elections are fixed, those will come down. Secondly, corruption itself is a big issue during elections. We all know that for many, elections are a way of bringing their black money into, and getting it legalized. So the number of elections in India is such thing that it is like, I'm from Kerala. If an election is happening in Kerala, people from all across India and all across the globe will come, and you will see them investing money and such like things here. So this corruption also will you will find that it will reduce to a great extent once this thing of elections get fixed. That is, at least the tenure, or we exactly know when the elections are going to be held. Now, also one aspect which again to my notice is, as was rightly brought out by Shri Kaushal, that the elections actually bring out so much of divisions amongst us, whether it is caste based, whether it is communal based, all these things. And to see it happening every 6 months, I think it creates a general sense of in India, that everything is bad, and we are so much divided. It's not like that. It is just because the elections are coming, people will say anything and everything, and suddenly the news is there. Because today's news is such that election happens in Assam, that also is covered. Something Mamata Banerjee, Srimati Mamata Banerjee, she says something, we know what is happening. So such kind of incidents also, I think will reduce, in case we can fix this tenures of the poll system. So apart from the other issues which I am sure the learned panelists will bring, my contention is that as the institutions of India which is there, for their smooth functioning, for their unbiased judgment by the public, it is important that they are brought less and less to during the elections. They should only function, okay, fun, like election commission, once in 5 years they are there, the election commission is there, nobody questions, everything comes into play, and everything is similarly. An operation takes place somewhere, and nobody can question, okay, now this operation is because Tamil Nadu election is coming up, okay, now this is happening because Punjab election is coming up. So those kind of things are away, and so that kind of public perception is not created, because all said and done, there is a sense of faith in the common man, in the judiciary, in the election commission, in the armed forces. And I think by frequent elections and frequent narratives being built around it, we actually tend to dilute the standards of these institutes, is what my understanding is. I'll close my remarks here, and I'll be take on the questions later.
Okay, thank you very much, Colonel Denny. And Colonel Denny has given a new angle to this discussion, and what he says is that this frequent elections which are taking place are also harmful, because sometimes it happens because once the country's armies are on the border, if anything happen in any of the border, and then that become a election issue in that particular state where the elections are taking place, and unnecessary the army is being taken for no reasons in the election, which is very not actually acceptable. As well as he also mentioned about the chief election commissioner or the election commissioner. He says that every time there are lots of allegations comes, why the date was given early, why the dates were not given, why so many things, although he has not mentioned. But otherwise people are saying, why so many phases election, why not so there are many views which are coming. If we will have elections once in 5 years, definitely all these things which have been narrated every 6 months will not be there, so the development of the country can take place. Thank you very much, Colonel Denny, for giving your views. Now I would like to invite my next guest, and he is Dr. C.V. Anand Bose, IAS. Dr. C.V. Anand Bose, IAS, is one-man expert commission on labor to prepare an action plan for the welfare and development of the workforce in the context of COVID-19. He was former head of the Disaster Management Government of India and Central Draft Relief Commissioner Government of India. He is also the Principal Advisor Government of India Heritage Project. He was the Vice Chancellor of National Museum, University of Delhi. He has authored 40 books in English, Malayalam and Hindi, including novels, short stories and essays, 4 of his books have become bestsellers. 4 books on Vastu and architecture and 1 book on housing received prestigious the Sharjah International Book Fair Award. Dr. Bose is an housing expert, innovator, writer, orator, and visionary. The path-breaking institutions set up by him, such as Nimriti Kendra, Building Center, District Tourism Council, and Habitat Alliance, have been replicated at the state, national, and global level. He was the head of the prestigious Supreme Court Committee on the Treasures of Sri Padmaswamy Temple. Dr. Bose addressed United Nations General Assembly and specialized sessions 5 times on various international issues. Dr. Bose is the recipient of 31 national and international awards, including United Nations Global Best Practice Award. He also received prestigious Jawaharlal Nehru Fellowship. Kerala government termed him Lord of Ideas. Former Prime Minister Mr. Manmohan Singh called him inspired civil servant, and our Honorable Prime Minister Mr. Modi called him man of ideas. Welcome, Dr. C.V. Anand Bose, on our show. Dr. Bose, before you join, Mr. Kaushal as well as Colonel Dini both have spoken, and they both are in favor of one nation, one election. Now, we would like to know one nation, one election. Mr. Dr. C.V. Anand Bose, IAS, please.
Thank you, Mr. Goel. I deem it a privilege to share this platform with my batchmate and former Chief Election Commissioner, O.P. Rawatji, and of course, very ebullient and erudite Sarvesh Kaushalji, and a young Dini. First of all, I apologize for coming late because there was a big traffic jam. Now we are concerned about the concept one nation, one election. I think this is what the country had practiced till 1967. We had simultaneous election with the Lok Sabha and the legislative assemblies. But then the phenomena of regional parties coming up in power in various states came, and there was a clash between the government of India at that time and also some of the state governments, and frequent dissolution of governments took place. That is when the system of one nation, one election, in my understanding, got disrupted. Now that is history. Now we are discussing nationwide the desirability of introducing one nation, one election. May I draw your attention to the fact that the Indian democracy is modeled on the Westminster system, that is a British system. In the UK also, they have one nation, one election. Till recently, before the Brexit, even elections, not only the House of Commons and the mayoral elections, even elections to the European Parliament was done together. Now, there are many countries which follow this practice. We have South African example, where the National Assembly and also to the provincial assemblies elections are held together. We have Sweden, we have Belgium, we have even Indonesia, which is following this. India is only discussing how to go back to those days when we also had simultaneous elections. There are, of course, pros and cons for this. I had the opportunity to listen to Mr. Kaushalji himself and Rawatji the other day on the pros and cons of this. So I think Kaushalji would have by this time given his views, which I didn't have the opportunity or the opportunity to listen to directly. But the pros and cons, in my understanding, if we have one nation, one election, the obvious fact is that the wastage of money, energy, and time is saved. More than that, what is actually election? Election is not an end in itself. Election is a means to an end. And it's a means to an end called good governance. We want governance. We want the governments to deliver. That is why we elect the government. And those governments which are elected, they should not always be on a campaign mode. When you have frequent elections, there is very little time to focus on governance, focus on delivering goods to the people. I think frequent elections do not do any good for democracy. But then there are also issues like, of course, we say logistics. Logistics factors are there. If we have the election simultaneous in the whole nation, of course, the deployment of forces, these are all logistic factors for which we will be able to find a solution. Now, the negative aspect of it is that why only one election in, say, 5 years? Are you not denying the people the right to make the proper choice? Because it's oftentimes pointed out that the national issues govern or determine the result of the parliamentary election. But it's a provincial or regional or state issues which should inform the nature or the character of the assembly elections. These are different. National priorities and state priorities are all different. So what is the meaning in mixing these two together? That is what the detractors of this say. So the pro changes and the no changes, they have their own arguments to parade. Both, as Addison said, much can be said about both sides. But what is good for the country? See, we do not need to waste resources, not only financial resources, human resources, time, energy, effort. Why waste it unless it makes optimum results? If elections once in 5 years to the parliament and also to the assembly. Personally, I would not include the election to the local bodies in this, because local bodies are entirely different. But that is a question of option, which I think our erudite friend and former Chief Election Commissioner O.P. Rawat will be able to give the last word. I will go by that. So I think on the balance of considerations, there is a strong case to have one nation, one election in this country. I think that will add to the stability of democracy. See, democracy is always evolving. It keeps on evolving. I think this itself is not a stage of final evolution. One nation, one election is one stage of this evolution. I think it's a very salubrious evolution. I think we should consider it that way. There is always need and there is always room for improvement in future. There is room for a mid-course correction. Once we see there are any lacunae in this, we of course have the option to correct it. And now once again, if my understanding is right, in 1983, the then Election Commission itself had recommended that we should have one nation, one election. Then afterwards came the Law Commission. The Law Commission is strongly supportive of the one nation, one election campaign or program system. I think there are legislative measures, policy measures, even constitutional changes may be required. But this is an idea which I think will certainly buttress democracy in this country. One nation, one election. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. C.V. Anand Bose, for giving your views. And Dr. C.V. Anand Bose is also of the view that one nation, one election. And he has given the examples of other countries also. But he wants, and not only he, I think everybody is waiting to hear what our former CEC is going to speak, because the person who had opportunity and who was on the helm of the affairs on the election commission as a chief election commissioner, he knows ins and outs of the election commission. He knows the difficulties, the pros and cons of the elections in India. I think it's better that we must go to him and listen to him, what he says. And Colonel Dini, what he mentioned, that it's good that he has, rather I must give thanks to our guest, Mr. Rawat, who asked me to put him in the last so that he will be able to give in details what the earlier panelists have not spoken. Otherwise, he said the repetition, and which is rightly said. So to avoid all those things, now he is going to be there. I am inviting our next guest, and he is Mr. Om Prakash Rawat, IAS. Mr. Rawat is the former Chief Election Commissioner of India. He took over as 22nd Chief Election Commissioner of India and retired in December 2018. During this period, Election Commission delivered elections to the state legislative assemblies of Tripura, Meghalaya, Nagaland, Karnataka, Mizoram, MP, Chhattisgarh, Telangana, and Rajasthan. During his tenure, common citizens were empowered through C-Vigil mobile application to video, photograph any malpractice by political party, candidate, or government election official, and submitting on this app so as to send it to all responsible authorities in one press of a button through GPS-enabled IDs, which was also piloted in Bengaluru during Karnataka polls. It has been stipulated that the concerned officials shall verify the information and take appropriate action and inform the complainant within 100 minutes. This proved popular with masses. Currently, Mr. Rawat is working as part-time chairman of Supreme Court mandated 3-member committee for content regulation of government advertising, CCRGA, with office at Suchna Bhavan, Lodhi Road, New Delhi. He is also working as part-time honorable chairman of Ahmedabad-based civil society organization, the Development Support Center, working for promotion of participatory management of natural resources in the states of MP, Maharashtra, Rajasthan, and Gujarat. Mr. Rawat belongs to the 1977 batch of IAS Madhya Pradesh cadre. He held office as Secretary to the Government of India, Ministry of Heavy Industries and Public Enterprises, Department of Public Enterprises for nearly 2 years in 2012 to 2013. Also, he was ex officio president of Governing Council of International Center for Promotion of Enterprises, Ljubljana, Slovenia, on intergovernmental body with membership of around 25 countries. He also worked at middle management level at the Ministry of Defense, Government of India. Mr. Rawat has experience of working at policy formulation level in the state of Madhya Pradesh in the sectors of agriculture and cooperation, education, mass communication, welfare of weaker section, child development, river valley development and participatory irrigation, industries, and commerce and state revenues. He was conferred Prime Minister's Award for Excellence in Public Administration for the year 2008-2009 for innovative team initiative of recognition of forest rights of scheduled tribes. Mr. Rawat holds a master's degree in physics from Banaras Hindu University, Varanasi, and another master's in economics from University of Wales, UK. Welcome, Mr. Rawat, on our show. Mr. Rawat, you have heard our earlier panelist, Mr. Kaushal, Colonel Dini, as well as Dr. C.V. Anand Bose. And both are of the view of one nation, one election. You being the head or you can be the chief election commissioner for many years, and you have seen everything in and out, and you know the difficulties and you know the advantages, everything you, I think no one better can explain, because you are retired recently, not so long, in 2018. So now we would like to know from you, one nation, one election. Mr. Rawat, please.
Thank you, Mr. Goel. Good morning, everybody. I would really like to thank Mr. Goel to have given this opportunity to me. I would also like to thank earlier panelists, my batchmate and dear friend, C.V. Anand Bose, Mr. Sarvesh Kaushal and Colonel S. Dini, who have contributed very, very significant issues, points, and pros and cons about one nation, one election, the subject of
Mr. Rawat, excuse me, your video is not coming. Yeah, now it is coming. Yes, yes. Okay. Yeah, now it is coming. Yes, please, go ahead.
Okay. So what they have said is really very significant, and I would not like to repeat any of those, except for clarifying on certain facts. First thing is expenditure.
Sorry, again your video is gone. Any other device is also working on the same network, Mr. Rawat? Because the net is big.
No, it is not working.
Okay, so net is weak. Anyway, please go ahead. Now we can see you.
Okay. Expenditure, I think in the world, we are the cheapest election delivering election commission or country. Our expenditure on elections is just $1 a vote, whereas next door neighbor spends around $1.6 a vote. One of the developing countries in African continent spends $25 a vote. Therefore, expenditure is not that big an issue on our elections. Yes, you are right. Colonel Dini pointed out, and Mr. Sarvesh Kaushal also pointed out, that political parties spend huge amount of money, 50,000 crore, so to say. They are right, but it is because of their own volition. If they can put a ceiling on political party expenditure, like there is a ceiling on individual candidates' expenditure, there won't be that much expenditure. So in all respect, even if you have separate election or elections together, expenditure will be a marginal issue at all, if at all it is an issue. Second thing is very important, which earlier panelists pointed out, that is creating bad blood, creating division, that we are divided on caste lines, religious lines. This is something which is very important, and this needs to be avoided by all means. I will go with that. This argument is really valid for our country's faster development. Many countries follow one nation, one election. Yes, that is correct, but there are differences. Most of the countries which follow one nation, one election have presidential form of government. They have proportionate representation system, not the first past the post system. Because I can just tell you that first past the post system delivers a government which secures 40% or 38% of the votes polled. Now, on an average in our country, polling is around 70%, 66 to 70%. Out of that 70%, any party securing just about 40%, that means only 28% of the total votes. Now that is democratic deficit. 72% voters have not voted for that government. And if that government continues for 5 years without caring for those 72%, there may be demands after one nation, one election that we should be given a right to recall because they are not performing for the welfare of all the masses. So there may be consequent issues which will be difficult to resolve and which will create all kinds of stresses and strains in our democracy. I will agree with Mr. Ananda Bose that local body elections are on a different footing, and therefore they should not be clubbed with assembly and parliament. And the same thing has been noted by Niti Aayog when they formulated a working paper on one nation, one election. With these clarifications, I would like to start that when I joined the Election Commission in 2015, the first question which came to us as Election Commission was this one nation, one election. Union government had referred to us asking as to what are your views, what are your suggestions on one nation, one election. Then Election Commission within 3 months provided all the inputs to the Union government that there may be certain amendments required in the Constitution, Article 83, 172, 85, 174, 356 of the Constitution, then certain amendments in the Representation of People Act 1951. With these amendments in place, there will be some issues on logistics. Right now, Election Commission manages all these elections with just about 2/3 of electronic voting machines and voter verifiable paper audit trail. But if we have simultaneous election to all assemblies and parliament, then we will be requiring full retinue of these machines. Means initial capital expenditure will be more. And these machines have a lifetime of 15 years. So the total amortization can be on 3 occasions, and that will add to the costs. Third was about central armed police forces and polling personnel. If we have simultaneous election, then more number of companies of central armed police forces will be required to provide secure polling, as well as more polling personnel from the central government as well as from the state governments, which I think should not be a problem. Only thing is, this whole process can begin only when the amendments to the Constitution and to the Representation of People Act are in place. Otherwise, Election Commission is compelled, is mandated to hold every election which becomes due or which house's term is coming to an end within next 6 months. They have to hold election for that house. So the wall was in Union Government's court as soon as the Election Commission gave these suggestions and comments in 2015. After that, Law Commission also submitted a report. Niti Aayog also prepared a paper, and a lot of discussion also took place. So now, where to go, how to go, that Union Government has to decide. Now I'll come to basic issues. You know, the elections are the most peaceful means of resolving political conflict. You might be knowing through history that earlier the succession used to take place by son killing the father and ascending to the throne. Elections in democratic polity have brought a very peaceful means of resolving this political conflict. And as my colleague Anand Bose said, that this political conflict has different dimensions, different issues, different footing at panchayat and local body level, at state level, and at central level. Now combining these all issues, all stresses and strains at one place is debatable. You have to find out what will be the repercussions at the polling station. Even now, with just state election and union parliament election being held separately, when the first election to the State Assembly of Bihar took place, when I was there in the commission, we had excellent CAPF arrangements, we had security arrangements, and not a single incident involving violence took place. But we lost 17 lives of our polling personnel and CAPF personnel who were deployed on security duty. Why? We found out that this was because of the stress. These people were in a crossfire of all kinds of activities on the part of political parties, candidates, and their supporters. That explains that political conflict, its dimensions are very important at the polling station, at the counting hall, and at the stage of result declaration. So we must keep that in mind when we try to club these elections together. Second issue is, that is also important, that right now, if you see intra-political party democracy, that is just not there anywhere. And unless the intra-political party democracy is there, it may be very difficult to carry on with one nation, one election, even after bringing them in synchronization once. They may again fall apart. Because earlier, 52 to 67, it was just dominance by one major political party. The voice of dissent was not that strong, and therefore it continued. But as soon as people came of age, they realized that we have a stake in democracy, running the government, and developing the people whom we are serving. These fell apart. And same thing will arise after first synchronization if we do not have certain electoral reforms and political party reforms. That will be the eventuality. Though there are solutions that you can again have them in synchronization by saying that if any house is dissolved before the term, if more than a year or so is left, then that can go for elections, but that election will be only for that leftover period. So that next election, it is again in the synchronization. But that will be more cumbersome, that will be more expensive. And since you are not prepared for this kind of eventuality, there may be more problems. So that eventuality has also to be kept in mind. Finally, I would just like to say that it is a very, very good idea Election Commission itself mooted in 1983, as one of our earlier panelists told, and different fora like Parliament Standing Committee on Personal and Public Grievances, Law Commission, Niti Aayog, all the institutions, all the stakeholders have been saying that we should go in for one nation, one poll, and avoid this kind of divisive political campaigning running whole of 5 years. We should go in for one nation, one election. I would just like to say that, yes, we should go in for this, but we must keep all these basic fundamental issues in mind and have a positive discourse on all these things so that we can come to a common consensus among political parties, among other stakeholders, and plan a roadmap for reaching one nation, one election, as it used to happen between 1952 to 1967. I think that is all I have to say to begin with. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rawat, for giving your views. And you have given a very, very descriptive way. You have explained each and everything, why one nation, one election is required. And you have given all the points, the pros and cons, everything, whatsoever is there because you worked as a chief election commissioner, you know the working and you know how the elections are taking place in India and what are the implications and complications. But still, there are a few questions which we definitely would like to know, but I think it is better. I think Dr. Bose has raised his finger. So I would like to know, Dr. Bose, you would like to ask any question or shall I start asking the question? Dr. Bose, please. Please unmute, please unmute, please unmute. Dr. Bose, please unmute.
I raised my hand because, listening to the former Chief Election Commissioner, gives us a sense of, authority. We are hearing something authoritative from the person who deserves to give it. And second, that is to listen to one's own batchmate in his capacity as election commissioner is a very, very endearing experience. That is why I raised my hand. Thank you very much, OP, not only as the Chief Election Commissioner, as my very dear friend and batchmate. I would like to listen to the answers which you will give to the questions which Mr. Goel will be raising here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Bose. Now, I think I will ask questions to all the panelists, and then I will ask all the questions, same questions to Mr. Rawat, so that we will see what is the situation if some more things can come. Mr. Kaushal, everyone has spoken in favor. Now, I would like to know, what are the disadvantages of one nation, one election?
If we speak about the point of view of the regional parties, they feel that the national parties have different agendas and substantially more resources, both financial as well as manpower, as well as logistics. And it will not be a level play field according to the regional parties. And they fear being steamrolled. And they fear that the national parties will take them along in a tsunami, which is nationwide. And the regional issues will take a back seat, and their very existence will ultimately be in danger. It will be just national parties and national parties versus national parties. And the regional parties so far, which have been very important in various pockets of India, will become only second fiddles. So we will have to talk about all these things to the regional parties because they are essential stakeholders India has a lot of diversity of culture, of language, of course, of everything, even political thought, even political ideology. And we need to, if we need to take everyone along in one direction, I think we'll have to talk to all stakeholders and impress upon them and convince them of the utility of the new model that we are proposing. Because we have seen that trust deficit is the worst enemy of anything good that we plan and we attempt in this country. We should first cross all bridges, build great bridges of trust, and then go on. The second was, as I was listening to Sri Rawat, the logistics. I feel the one-time expenditure on the EVMs and their replenishment after 15 years, it will be much less than the amount of money spent by the candidates and the political parties, which comes to almost not less than 1 lakh crores for all the elections put together that go on. But the difficulty in that is that there are very powerful stakeholders. The elections are sacred. The democracy is sacred. But the electoral process has, over a period of time, degenerated into a scam of sorts, where the free political will of the people is influenced through, there are incentives, there are inducements, there are threats, there's all sorts of viciousness has crept into the electoral process, and the beneficiaries of the 60,000 crores or 1 lakh crores of money that is being spent would throw all spanners into the wheel and will block the reform and ensure that the reform fails. We may have to go in for digital substitutes for personal physical voting process to reduce the cost and reduce the polling station specific law and order issues. If that can be done, if through net banking we can transfer lakhs and crores of rupees from one person to the other, if we can pay thousands of crores of rupees directly to the farmers for their harvest, why can't we think of a simultaneous system, an optional system of digital voting? If it is done, then perhaps the load on the polling stations or threat to certain people who are prevented from voting, obstructions, that can be taken care of, but a lot of research and determination is required in this front. Unfortunately, the political narrative and the political discourse in the country has become so adversarial that if someone says it is dawn time, the others must say it is sunset time. If half of the people say it is day, the other half says it's night. The common progressive undercurrent of democratic forces is missing. That's the biggest bane. That's why I'm saying that let there be one election after 5 years and let the tempers normalize in another 6 months, and the nation should be a nation of normal thinking people.
Okay. So thank you, Mr. Kaushal, for giving views. Colonel Dini, as Mr. Kaushal mentioned about if we will have one nation, one election, the national party will have the advantage. Now, it means it is going to kill the chance of regional parties as well as the independent candidates. Now, you mentioned that any incident is taking place it is creating some narration is creating. Now, my question to you is, if one election in one nation, one election is taking place at one time, if any incident is taking place, it can be beneficial, advantageful, as well as disadvantageful for the parties, can be a ruling party or the opposition. So, because here the stake is so high, and if any incident is taking place, whether created by someone or naturally, it will harm the prospects of the party. Then it will not be a democratic process. What you say, Colonel Dini, in a very because we would like to listen more from the CEC. So I want that. Whatsoever. Yeah, please.
Sure. Firstly, just regarding this point of smaller parties disappearing, I'd like to give an example. In 1957, when the elections were held, I think 1957 was the first time when a communist government was brought in through ballots, and that was in Kerala. So when the entire country was with the Congress under Pandit Nehru, Kerala chose the communist government. So we have examples in which I think the voters are fairly, they know what to do and how to do. Like that is one of the examples which I'm trying to give you, and there are so many other examples. Now, regarding this incident having a adverse, there is no doubt that if an incident happens just before an election, it does have a bearing on that particular election. But what happens is now there is a constant fear of whosoever is the government, whether he is in the state government, or that if something happens somewhere, it is going to affect him, because the election is just somewhere is happening, because all these parties are connected. A national party may be at the center, but the same party might be ruling in some other states as well. Now, so if an incident happens, let's say if there is just one election in 5 years, and an incident happens after the elections have taken place after 1 year, the government still has 4 years to overcome that crisis, to show the public that they did a good job, or even the public also has a time to judge whether the government was right or not. Now what is happening is that every 6 months there is an election, so the memory of the public is fresh, and that memory is being misused by people to create a narrative that everything is wrong is happening in India. So that's what my contention is, that frequent elections lead to a narrative being created purposefully that everything is not good in India. I'm not saying that everything is good, but I also feel that everything is not bad either. So that kind of thing, once elections are 5 years, that much more time people have to show that the governance skills and such like things.
Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Bose, my question to you is, now once the code of conduct comes in force, everyone is reporting directly, means everyone means the chief key post people are reporting to the commission. So if anything happens, they are responsible, and election commission changes the transfers the key post, whether the administrative or the police for the key persons. But the blame which is coming with one people says that because of the code of conduct which is coming up frequently, the progress of the state or the city stops because of the code of conduct. No work used to take place. Why not at that time, whenever the code of conduct is there, why not the entire machinery to be put under the election commission, through the state election commission? After all, there are state election commission, and so that the work can go ahead without any new announcements, because the political parties try to do the new announcement, but they will not do, but they will be carrying out all the works. What you say, because you are involved and being the district head of many of your in the previous tenure, you know how the things were. What you say about this, Dr. Bose?
So the election code of conduct is a necessary anchor which should control the elections in any country. Unfortunately for us, the Election Commission of India has teeth. It can implement it. It is implementing the election code of conduct also. Now, the larger issue is, see here, I could see a kind of words of balance from Sri O.P. Rawat ji and also Kaushal ji, and of course, Dini. Kaushal ji said, when we discuss one nation, one election. The concept itself is good, but we should have a consensus in the state, in the country. That is where he said a lot of discussion is to take place. In fact, the trust deficit, which he has underlined, is very much there. When we try to implement anything in a country with the sweeping changes in it, involved in it, I think it is very necessary that there should be social dialogue on many levels. I think we can take a decision on this only after the social dialogue is taken, it has taken shape in various fora, and there is a consensus in the country that there should be one nation, one election. Now, once again, I would like to say, this is only a means. Election is only a means to an end, that is governance. It is said, forms of government. It is Alexander Pope who said, forms of government, let fools contest. That which is administered best is the best. If that is the case, and people also say people get the government they deserve, we elect a government so that they can govern. And there should be given enough time for that. If the entire government, all state governments in the nation, and also the central government is always in a campaign mode, then where is the time? Where is the freedom? Where is the liberty? Where is the space for them to administer the country and deliver goods to the people? Therefore, it's a two-edged weapon. Whether we can choose either for this or for that. But according to me, personally, and also in the light of what Sri OP has stated here, and other panelists have stated here, I am inclined to support the one nation, one election theory. All aspects involved in that, including the logistics. See, I think this country will certainly be able to raise the sufficient logistics required for this. If personnel is a problem, why not for the temporary period of election? Why not empower the retired police officials and retired soldiers to take the police action for this particular period? I think India, which got stood the test of COVID, will certainly be able to arrange whatever logistics is required for this. On the balance of consideration, I would still say that whatever be the demerits of one nation, one election, the merits outweigh the demerits. Therefore, in a pluralistic society, I think one nation, one election is better. And also there should be, as I said, democracy has to produce results. As Amitabh Kant, from the Niti Aayog said in one context, that there is too much of democracy. I do not want to underline that, but democracy also has to stabilize somewhere. We should give enough time for those who are elected to rule this country the best in their own best way. Therefore, I think the weight is in favor of one nation, one election, and whatever are the practical problems, I think India has the internal strength to overcome those problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bose. Now I am coming to our CEC, Mr. Rawat. Mr. Rawat, there are many questions, many reservations. When I decided to do this program, many of my colleagues have asked me to ask the questions. First question they says, why not India, when we are talking of one nation, one election, why not India should also have two-party system instead of multi-parties? Because we have seen in a state elections or any elections, 70 or 80 people are filing the nominations. It's a wastage of money, and everybody knows that who is going to win, and they are just filing. Don't you think there should be a curve of a number of candidates, or one or two or three maximum parties? That is one. I want to give you the thought so that you can give in an extensive way the reply. The another thing is, because if we will have one nation and one election, definitely it will be disadvantage for the independent candidates. They cannot. They have no they have not that much means that they will be able to stand. So it means we have to curtail the independence candidates, so we can go for the two-party system. Secondly, about the digital voting, which Mr. Kaushal has mentioned. Now, the reservation which so I can presume, but I can't say you, I'm not the authority, you have to tell that what will happen. Suppose I am traveling and I am in Delhi and I have to vote in Mumbai, and I want to vote for somebody in Mumbai sitting in Delhi. Yes, I can do it by the OTP. But take a chance like this, that in case of Bihar or UP, where the people, the Bahubalis, those who have strength, they will go and they will see to it that all those weaker section vote digitally immediately with putting force at their house. So that whether the digital voting is also possible, because when we are talking of one nation, one election, then a person can vote from anywhere. So these two are right now I'm asking you, then you can say whatsoever the others panelists have mentioned. So you can add and you can whatsoever you want to mention about that. Mr. Rawat, please.
Thank you, Mr. Goel. First, I'll take digital voting. In fact, Election Commission was seized of this issue, and therefore we decided to start linking elector voter ID card with Aadhaar, so that biometric identification was made possible. But that privacy issue in the Honorable Supreme Court stayed the whole process, and that process has not yet begun. In a period of just about a year, we could link 30 crore, 300 million voter IDs to Aadhaar. So it was going very fast, but then it got stayed, and therefore it could not materialize. Second thing is Election Commission commissioned CDAC Pune for developing a technology for electronic voting. First, one way, so that we can give this e-postal ballot to our armed forces service voters, because we found that their participation in our election process was hardly 2 to 3%, because one-way journey used to take by post 10 to 15 days. Return journey also used to take 10 to 15 days. And if the gap is only 20 days, most of their votes were invalid because they reached later than the counting day. So first, the technology for one-way electronic journey of the ballot was developed, and it was inaugurated in 2016, later months, November, December. And I think for the first time, it was piloted in 4 states, UP, Uttarakhand, Punjab, and one more, Goa. But it was universally utilized in the state elections of Gujarat and Himachal. And you will be pleased to know that our armed forces personnel voting participation rose from 2% or 3% to 67%. And that was really satisfying to the Election Commission, that those people who guard our borders, they could now participate in a big way. So one-way electronic journey of ballot ensured that first 15 days of onward journey are removed, and the voter sitting at Siachen or somewhere else has all 20 days for himself to cast his vote and then just put it in an envelope and send to the returning officer. And that is why this percentage went up. Now, CDAC was also commissioned for return journey of the ballot by electronic means. That technology is still under development, because we want a secure technology so that our political parties and all individual candidates, they have full faith in the system. Recently, Election Commission also tried blockchain technology through IIT Chennai, but that is also in the stage of infancy. But I will tell you another thing, without biometric identification, this will have all kinds of vulnerabilities, as you yourself pointed out, that weaker section, wherever they are working, their passports are taken by the employer, their other documents are taken by the employer, they have no free will, and when no biometric identification is required, anybody can vote. All kinds of vulnerabilities will creep in, and that is why Election Commission wanted to link biometric identification data to voter ID card. Second aspect is whether people are really prepared to participate digitally. Gujarat was the first state to have digital voting starting in 2010-11 for local body elections. But latest election data shows that out of 9.6 million, 96 lakh voters, only 1,400 or less registered for digital voting, and total number of votes polled digitally was just less than 400 out of 96 lakhs. So that shows that the interest of voters in participating in elections or polling digitally is not really that encouraging. Even then, Election Commission is making efforts to go in for digital voting, online voting, so that all those people who are on the move and their participation is not there, they are facilitated to come in the election arena and poll their votes. Second issue was two parties only. This is not an issue for the Election Commission to undertake a discussion or anything. This is an issue for the people as well as for the political parties, their people's representatives, parliament, and union government. They have to work on this and then create a framework, create a roadmap for going to that. Otherwise, it may be considered undemocratic because anyone not agreeable to this, I said that intra-party democracy is not there. What to talk of in other arenas? Second issue was independence. Yes, independents come up because they feel alienated to the mainstream political parties' way of functioning, way of working, their policies, their programs, and that is why they come up. But of late, it is seen that just because they did not get the ticket from the political party, they either switch political party or they seek election as independent. That is the multi-dimensionality of the political conflict issue. And therefore, it will require that kind of political solution, which I have said that two-party system or otherwise, this is basically a political issue which should be addressed by parliament, by people's representatives, and by people at large. I think I have been able to answer.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rawat. Before I will go to Mr. Kaushal, one small question which is bothering. Like recently in the West Bengal, Election Commission has banned the entry of the politicians to a particular constituency or a particular district. Why not, when we are talking of one nation, one election, we ban all politicians to go on site? Only the Election Commission, like earlier time, we used to have the some time on the Doordarshan and the radios where they used to give their views. Why not? Or even now, the present time when they have private channels, Election Commission takes the time of a private channel, not a prime time and during the daytime, and there they allocate to all the political parties. So the prime minister or the opposition leader or those who wants to address, they need not to go anywhere. So the expenses can be saved. And like what is happening today during the pandemic, still the election is on, and so much people are saying everywhere the criticism is going on that why, when the so much safe distancing we are talking, and we are talking of the COVID norms, the politicians are not following, and Election Commission is not taking action, although Election Commission has put up some code of conduct, but nobody is following. What do you say about that, Mr. Rawat?
It's a very important question which you have put, that Election Commission should ensure that politicians not going to a particular territory, which Bihar and West Bengal at present. In fact, Election Commission is continuing with the system of allocating radio time, television time to various parties, various outfits, depending on their performance in the last elections. Whatever percentage of votes are polled by them, in that ratio, they allocate time on national channels of Doordarshan, All India Radio, all kinds of things. And this was also under consideration for procuring time from private TV channels and private FM radios, etc., as a way, by way of public funding of elections, as a part of public funding of elections. I think it's a good idea, and we should think about it, and that will ensure compliance to COVID norms while campaigning. If we give a lot of more time, including private channels, then political parties may refrain. But on the other hand, we see even a smallest election The
I think,
highest level of
maybe-
functionaries go.
I think we have again lost you, Mr. Rawat. Yes, now you're there. Yes, please go ahead. Sorry,
In
please go ahead.
fact, the issue is that even the smallest of the elections, highest level of leadership
No,
jumps
now we
into the
can't even
fray.
hear you.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, please go ahead. Please go ahead. Yeah, we can hear you now.
Yeah, that is the issue, and that is a political issue that political parties and politicians have to decide as to what they should do about it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Mr. Kaushal, you want to ask some question to? Yes, please go ahead, Mr. Kaushal.
While we are contemplating one nation, one election, one of the two major considerations, the other being the policy and governance paralysis, is the cost. The money that is spent by the political parties and the candidates during the elections, which according to an estimate is 50,000 crores for one Lok Sabha elections. I want to hear from the former CEC, what is the Election Commission's stand on putting a very strict cap on the expenditure of political parties? And number two, transparency in political donations.
Actually,
I see that Election Commission has, despite its best efforts, not been able to curb this exorbitant expenditure that the candidates and the parties undertake in the elections.
Actually, Mr. Kaushal, I think you have raised a valid point, but the jurisdiction for bringing in change is in the realms of Parliament. Election Commission has to follow the law. Even the Honorable Supreme Court said, wherever there is a void in law, Election Commission can formulate its own modus operandi for meeting any challenge. But if there is a law, Election Commission must go by that law. Now, law says that there will be a ceiling only on individual candidates' expenditure. There shall be no ceiling on political parties' expenditure. And Election Commission has been recommending about this reform that please bring in a ceiling on political party expenditure. Once that ceiling is in, then this 50,000 crore, 60,000 crore will go away. It will not be there. And this creates confusion. For individual expenditure, Election Commission's arrangements are so mature now that hardly anywhere you can find any candidate exceeding expenditure, but he takes the or she takes the shelter of political party expenditure. And there being no limit on that, a lot of money is being spent by way of political parties' initiatives. Bringing in this ceiling will be in the domain of Parliament and Union government. If they bring this ceiling in, it will be a major reform on abuse of money in elections.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Rawat. Now the last round, 1 minute each. I will start from Mr. Kaushal, from you only. Any suggestion to government and advice to public? 1 minute, please. Please unmute.
I would say that we should all wholeheartedly support the idea of one nation, one election. But as a prerequisite to that, we must eliminate any possible trust deficit in all stakeholders. Second, it cannot be one isolated reform. We have to think of comprehensive packages of reform. Now we are talking of one election, one nation, only because we have not been able to curb the evil effects of staggered and repetitive elections. As Mr. Rawat just said, that there are certain areas which do not fall into the Election Commission's domain, they fall in the legislature's domain. There are some where constitutional amendment is required, which requires a different type of a process, and then some in the representation.
Okay.
We must all move forward in one direction.
Okay, thank you very much. Colonel Dini,
Absolutely, there is no doubt that this particular one poll, one nation, one election is only a part of the reforms and not the reform, the complete reform itself, as was said. Secondly, this particular process itself, I think, will bring about political cultural change in India. So, wherein we will have a little more mellowed down, toned down, decent, center kind of, not taking extreme views, at least for a fair amount of time, rather than, constantly being at it. I think somewhere down the line, maybe it is in 1967, we lost that political culture towards 1970s, due to which I think we lost this. We went back. We went away from this system of one nation, one poll. I think we need to go back to that and change the political culture of our
Okay.
country.
Thank you. Dr. C.V. Anand Bose, please.
I have only two brief points to make. One is a request to government and also to the Election Commission. There is a neglected set of voters in the country, that they are the Pravasis. The Pravasis have voting rights, but they cannot elect their own MP. They only elect an MP who is in an alien land. But they should be empowered to vote their own MP from among the Pravasis in that country and sent on the parliament and the assemblies. I think by virtual constituencies or national constituencies and digital voting, I think this can be made possible. Number two, the Election Commission, as I said, has teeth. It has confidence, it has determination. It has proved its strength. But I would say that they should be empowered more. Election Commission reforms are to be introduced so the Election Commission has more power and authority to ensure that free and independent elections take place in this country. And as far as the election campaigning is concerned, why not the Election Commission itself provide a level playing field for all the political parties for campaign? Why waste so much of money? Why so much of din and bustle? Why so much of hatred? As somebody used to say earlier, we used to cast our vote. Now we vote our caste. I think the Election Commission should be sufficiently empowered. They should be the last and final say as far as elections are concerned. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Rawat, last word from you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Goel. I fully agree with my fellow panelists, Mr. Kaushal, Mr. Colonel Denny, and my batchmate Anand Bose, that we should move for one nation, one poll with more electoral reforms which are needed, so that we can deliver something which is more beneficial to our nation, to our people, and to the whole world at large. We can set an example. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you very much. So today you have seen how the experts in the field, they have given their views, and their views are very, very clear, to see the government, the country to develop, to see that the people will not have the hatred. The one nation, one election is required. And for that, the public, the civil society has to come forward. They must come and they must say that, yes, we require these types of things. Otherwise, every 3 months, the elections are taking place. And even in the pandemic time, elections are taking place. And we are blaming the politicians, we are blaming the Election Commission, while it is we who have decided. We are not taking a decision. We must ask our MPs, we must ask our MLAs to vote for one nation, one election. Then only we can say, yes, we are a great nation. Thank you very much. And today's program has been live telecasted by V4NEWS, Global TV, V4 Stream, Malnadu TV, News Gaon Se, Samvad Sarokar News, as well as it was shown live on Facebook and YouTube. And our endeavor is to bring to you every day a new topic. And tomorrow our topic is COVID returns, impact on addiction. And our panelists are Dr. Rukhsana Hassan, renowned psychologist, trainer, coach, motivational speaker, special educator for early childhood education and development, and Dr. Anil Kakunje, professor and head Department of Psychiatry, Yenupaya Medical College, Yenupaya University, Mangalore. So please tune in tomorrow for media conference with Lal Goel at 10:30 a.m. Thank you very much, Mr. Sarvesh Kaushal. Thank you very much, Colonel Dini. Thank you very much, Dr. C.V. Anand Bose. And thank you very much, Mr. Om Rawat, for joining us and enriching us, all of us, include all our viewers, with your very, very experienced views. Thank you, all our viewers, for watching our show. Thank you very much.
Hello. 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 Hello.